Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we touch one of the favorite myths of political talk shows. The United States is about to start a war for Venezuelan oil. Sounds dramatic, fits on a protest banner, and like most simple explanations, it collapses the moment you look at the numbers. Let's start with the famous figure, 300 billion barrels of Venezuelan oil reserves, the largest in the world on paper. Key phrase, on paper. Back in 2009, BP's statistical review showed Venezuelan reserves at roughly 100 billion barrels respectable, but nothing cosmic. Then in the 2010 edition, for the same year, 2008, the number is suddenly revised to about 172 billion. A bit later, we're already near 300 billion, same country, same fields, same geology. No miracle well from the center of the earth, just a new methodology and the political will to call heavy, hard-to-produce oil reserves. On the spreadsheet, Venezuela becomes the king of oil. In reality, you still need money, technology, and competence to get that stuff out of the ground. And here is where the fairy tale starts to tear. When those triple reserves appeared in statistics, Venezuelan production was not exploding, it was falling. In the 2000s, the country produced around 3.5 million barrels per day. By the mid-2000s, after price shocks and chronic mismanagement, production is roughly 2.5 to 2.7 million. After the 2014 oil price collapse, new crises, sanctions, and then the COVID crash, output sinks below 1 million barrels per day, at some point down near 700,000. So, on paper, plus 200 billion barrels. In reality, production divided by roughly 3. This is not how a healthy oil superpower behaves. This is how a state asset is slowly strangled, while statistics tell you bedtime stories. For contrast, look at the United States. Over roughly the same period, U.S. reserves are also revised upward thanks to shale. But their reserve growth is mirrored by a production boom. Shale oil, tight oil, gas liquids, all that lovely fracking horror environmentalists cry about. You may hate the method, you may hate the impact, but at least in the U.S. case, more reserves meant more barrels actually leaving the ground. In Venezuela's case, triple reserves meant new slides for conferences and ever longer speeches about the largest reserves in the world. Now, where does Washington enter this circus? For years, Venezuela was an important supplier to the U.S., especially of heavy crude suitable for American refineries on the Gulf Coast. At one point, Venezuela was third largest supplier after Canada and Mexico. Then come sanctions. Venezuelan crude is cut off, and suddenly Russia jumps into that third place. Later, Saudi Arabia dances around the same spot. The market does what it always does. It reroutes flows. Barrels don't care about ideology. They care about pipelines, tankers, and discounts. On the Venezuelan side, sanctions plus the global price roller coaster crush investment, technology access, and logistics. Production drops further. Then, under Biden, some sanctions are partially relaxed, U.S. companies cautiously return, and surprise, output in Venezuela starts to recover a bit, closer to 1 million barrels per day again, and flows to the U.S. restart in some form. Now ask yourself a very boring, very capitalist question. If Washington wants Venezuelan oil, what is cheaper? Option A, send carrier groups, risk a regional war, destabilize the market, scare investors, and spend billions just to occupy a country whose oil sector you still have to rebuild from ruins. Option B, sign a couple of papers, partially lift sanctions, let your own companies walk in with lawyers and engineers, and slowly take control through contracts, debt, and infrastructure. One option involves Marines, the other involves Excel. Guess which one Wall Street prefers? This is why the primitive line, they're sending the fleet to steal oil, doesn't pass the smell test. If the goal is just access to barrels, the cheapest tool is sanctions management, not invasion. Lift, tighten, grant waivers, revoke waivers, let companies in, push them out, play with licenses. That's how you milk a weak oil state in the 21st century. Does this mean military pressure is irrelevant? No. Gunboat diplomacy still exists. A carrier parked somewhere on the horizon is a very persuasive argument in any negotiation. But to say they are coming for the oil is to misunderstand both the economics and the timing. Oil is already there. Market access is already structured. Washington doesn't need a colonial war to get Venezuelan crude. It needs a flexible sanctions regime and a government in Caracas that is desperate enough to sign whatever is put on the table. And here we get to the unpleasant part for Caracas. Triple reserves on paper did not make the country rich. Decades of political games, underinvestment, corruption, and dependence on oil rent made it weak. A weak state sitting on large resources is not a winner in this story. It's a buffet. From the U.S. side, the picture is also changing. Washington is busy pushing the idea of energy superpower, exporting LNG, oil, gas, and later selling energy in refined form through AI, data centers, and digital infrastructure. In that model, the periphery is not a beloved imperial jewel, it is just a client. Buy our fuels, use our tech, park your savings in our assets, that's all. Standing armies of occupation are expensive. Long-term contracts, sanctions, and digital leverage are cheaper. So where does this leave the myth of an inevitable oil war over Venezuela? In the trash bin, where it belongs. Will Washington keep pressuring Caracas? Yes. Will it use sanctions, fleets, color revolution toolkits, media campaigns? Very likely. No, a full-scale war for the oil itself is the least rational scenario. To get Venezuelan barrels, the U.S. doesn't need to conquer anything. It just needs to decide how much chaos in Latin America it can tolerate and how big a discount it wants on heavy crude. The tragedy is different. Venezuela has paper reserves of 300 billion barrels, but not 300 billion barrels of sovereignty. If you cannot convert geology into stable production and production into stable development, someone else will eventually convert you into a resource. That's the real story behind all these beautiful numbers. Thank you for watching. If this analysis made you slightly less sure of your favorite slogans, that's good news. Your brain is still working. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and see you in the next episode.